I woke up in a hospital bed 3 days after emergency surgery to find 47 missed calls on my phone and a text message from my neighbor that made my blood run cold. Marcus, I'm so sorry. They destroyed everything. My name is Marcus Chen, and I had spent the last 8 years transforming my 2-acre property in Willow Creek, Oregon, into a thriving flower farm. What started as a hobby after my wife passed away became my livelihood, my therapy, and my purpose. I grew dahlias, zinnias, sunflowers, and specialty roses that I sold to local florists and at farmers markets. The business wasn't making me rich, but it paid the bills and gave me a reason to get up every morning. The appendicitis hit me like a freight train on a Tuesday evening. One minute I was deadheading roses, the next I was on the ground in agony. My neighbor Jim found me and called 911. The surgery was supposed to be routine, but complications kept me hospitalized for 5 days instead of the planned 2. During those 5 days, my world fell apart, and I had no idea until I checked my phone. I scrolled through the messages with shaking hands, my surgical incision throbbing. Jim had sent increasingly frantic texts. Photos loaded slowly on the hospital Wi-Fi, and each one felt like a punch to the gut. My flower beds, my carefully tended rows of blooms, were gone, buried under what looked like tons of gray gravel. My greenhouse appeared damaged. My irrigation system was torn up. Everything I had built was destroyed. What happened? I croaked out loud, though I was alone in the room. I kept scrolling until I found Jim's explanation. The HOA did it. They had trucks here Thursday and Friday. I tried to stop them, but they had some kind of order. Marcus, I'm so sorry. I didn't know what to do. The HOA. The Willow Creek Estates Homeowners Association. I felt rage rise in my chest, despite the pain medication still in my system. We'd had our disputes before, mainly with the president, Patricia Moreland, a 52-year-old retired real estate agent who treated the neighborhood like her personal fiefdom. She had complained about my unsightly farm business in a residential zone, but my property was grandfathered in. The flower farm existed before the HOA was even established 15 years ago. I had the documentation to prove it. I called Jim immediately, not caring that it was 6 in the morning. Marcus, thank God, Jim answered on the first ring. How are you feeling? Forget how I'm feeling. Tell me everything. Jim sighed heavily. Thursday morning around 8, 2 dump trucks showed up with a bobcat. Patricia was there with some guy in a suit. They had workers, maybe 5 or 6 of them. They started ripping out your flowers, Marcus, just tearing through everything. I ran over and asked what the hell they were doing. Patricia showed me some paper, said it was a violation order, that you'd been warned multiple times and failed to comply. That's insane. I never got any violation notices, and even if I had, they can't just destroy my property. I know, man. I told them that. I said you were in the hospital, that this was your business, but Patricia just smiled that cold smile of hers and said the work had been authorized and was proceeding as planned. They spent 2 days out there. Pulled out all your flowers, ripped up the irrigation lines, and then dumped load after load of gravel over everything. They damaged your greenhouse too. Looks like the bobcat clipped it while turning around. I couldn't speak for a moment. 8 years of work, gone in 2 days. Tell me you called the police, I said. I did. They came out, but Patricia showed them paperwork. The officer said it appeared to be an HOA matter and that you'd have to take it up with them or through the courts. He said unless there was clear evidence of criminal activity, it was a civil dispute. Did my security cameras catch everything? If they were running, they should have. I saw the cameras were still up on your house. That gave me a small glimmer of hope. I had installed a comprehensive security system 2 years ago after some kids vandalized mailboxes in the neighborhood. 6 cameras with cloud backup covering all angles of my property. Jim, I need you to do me a favor. I should be discharged today. Can you pick me up? Of course. Just call me when you're ready. The doctor cleared me at noon with strict instructions about rest and limited physical activity. The 18 staples in my abdomen made sure I wouldn't be doing anything strenuous anyway. Jim helped me into his truck, and the 15-minute drive to Willow Creek Estates felt like an eternity. We turned onto Maple Drive, my street, and my heart sank even before we reached my house. I could see the gray expanse where vibrant colors should have been. Jim pulled into my driveway, and I just sat there, staring. It was worse than the photos suggested. My entire front yard, which had been carefully designed beds of flowers in complementary colors, was now a flat gray plain of gravel. The side yard where I grew specialty roses was the same. I could see from the driveway that the backyard, where my main growing fields were located, had received the same treatment. "Take your time," Jim said quietly. I got out slowly, each movement sending sharp pains through my midsection. I walked around to the backyard, Jim following at a respectful distance. The destruction was total. 2 full acres of flowers, representing thousands of dollars in plants and years of soil preparation, buried under several inches of gray gravel. My greenhouse had a collapsed wall. The shed where I kept my tools appeared untouched, at least. The irrigation system's above-ground components were torn and scattered. I pulled out my phone and started taking photos and videos, documenting everything. Then I went inside and immediately accessed my security system. My hands trembled as I pulled up the footage from Thursday morning. The timestamp reads 7:47 a.m. when the first truck appeared. I watched as Patricia Murilin's silver Lexus pulled up, followed by 2 dump trucks and a pickup hauling a bobcat. Patricia got out wearing white capri pants and a pink blazer, completely overdressed for a demolition job. A man in a dark suit emerged from the passenger side. I fast-forwarded slightly, watching as workers unloaded the bobcat and began their assault on my property. The footage captured everything in crystal clear high definition. Patricia standing there with her arms crossed, supervising, the bobcat tearing through my dahlia beds. Workers ripping out rose bushes that had taken years to establish. It was like watching someone destroy a piece of my soul. Jim appeared in the footage, running over and gesturing animatedly. I turned up the volume on my computer. The audio was decent from the camera mounted near the driveway. "What are you doing? This is Marcus Chen's business. You can't just destroy his property." Jim's voice came through clearly. Patricia's response was chilling in its calmness. "Mr. Henderson, this is HOA business. Mr. Chen has been in violation of multiple covenants and has ignored repeated warnings. This remediation is entirely legal and authorized. He's in the hospital, and I've never seen any warnings posted. The warnings were sent via certified mail to his address. His failure to respond or comply left us no choice. Now please step back or I'll have to call the police for interference." I watched Jim reluctantly back away, pulling out his phone to record on his own device. The demolition continued. The cameras captured everything from multiple angles. Patricia checking her watch. Workers dumping the first loads of gravel. The bobcat spreading it around. My greenhouse wall crumpling when the machine's back end swung wide. The footage from Friday showed more of the same. They returned to complete the job, adding more gravel, ensuring complete coverage. Patricia was there again, coffee cup in hand, watching my livelihood disappear under tons of gray rock. I saved all the footage to multiple locations, including emailing copies to myself and uploading to a separate cloud service. This was evidence, and I wasn't taking any chances of losing it. "What are you going to do?" Jim asked. He had made coffee and stood in my kitchen doorway. "I'm going to bury her," I said, "legally speaking." I spent the rest of Saturday making calls despite my exhaustion and pain. First, I called a lawyer named Rachel Tremaine who specialized in property law. Her office was closed for the weekend, but I left a detailed voicemail and sent an email with some of the security footage attached. Then I called my insurance company. The agent I spoke with was sympathetic, but explained that the policy wouldn't cover HOA actions. as it would be considered a civil matter rather than a covered peril like fire or theft. However, she suggested I file a report anyway to have it documented. Next, I tried the police again, calling the non-emergency line. The dispatcher was polite but told me essentially what Jim had already reported. It was a civil dispute. Unless I had evidence of criminal trespass or destruction that violated criminal statutes, I needed to handle it through civil courts or the HOA's internal processes. They destroyed my business, I said, trying to keep my voice level. That's over $100,000 in damages. How is that not criminal, sir? I understand your frustration. But if they had any kind of authorization or paperwork claiming HOA authority, it becomes a question of whether that authority was legitimate. That's for a judge to decide. You can come file a report in person, and an officer can document the damage, but I'm being honest with you about what will happen. I made an appointment to file a report on Monday. It wasn't satisfying, but it was something. Sunday morning, I woke up to find Patricia's silver Lexus parked in front of my house. Through the window, I watched her get out, smoothing her skirt, and walk up to my front door. The doorbell rang. I considered not answering, but rage won over caution. I needed to hear what she possibly had to say. I opened the door, keeping the security screen latched between us. "Marcus," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I heard you were back from the hospital. I hope you're recovering well." "Cut it. What do you want?" Her smile tightened. "I wanted to discuss your property situation. As you've seen, the HOA has remediated the violations. We need to discuss next steps and your compliance going forward." "Compliance? You destroyed my business. You had no right." "We had every right," she said, her voice sharpening. "You were sent 3 certified letters outlining your violations of the covenants, conditions, and restrictions. Commercial farming operations are strictly prohibited in Willow Creek Estates. You were given 30 days to cease operations with each notice. You ignored all 3. I never received any letters, certified or otherwise, and my property is grandfathered. The farm existed before your HOA was even formed." Patricia pulled a folder from her oversized purse. "I have the certified mail receipts right here, sent to your address. And as for your grandfather claim, the covenants clearly state that all properties, regardless of prior use, must comply within 6 months of the HOA's establishment. That deadline was 14 years ago, Marcus. You've been in violation for over a decade. We've been lenient, but patience has limits." "Show me those receipts." She held up 3 green certified mail cards through the screen. From where I stood, they looked legitimate with signatures on each one, but I knew I'd never received any such letters. "Those signatures aren't mine," I said. "They were received at your address." "That's all that's required. You forged them." Her expression went ice cold. "Be very careful about making accusations you can't prove, Marcus. The HOA followed proper procedures. Your property is now in compliance. You owe the association $14,300 for the remediation work. I owe you nothing. I'll see you in court. If that's how you want to proceed, that's your choice. But be aware that continued defiance will result in further fines, potential liens against your property, and legal action. Good day." She walked back to her Lexus with the confidence of someone who believed they held all the cards. I closed the door and leaned against it, my incisions screaming from the stress of standing. But my mind was racing. Certified mail receipts with forged signatures. That was mail fraud, a federal crime. This had just gotten more interesting. Monday morning, Rachel Tremaine called me at 8 sharp. "Mr. Chen, I watched the security footage you sent. This is outrageous. Can you come to my office today? I just got out of the hospital on Saturday. I can make it, but I move slowly." "That's fine. How's 11? Rachel's office was in downtown Willow Creek, in a renovated Victorian house that served as a law office. She was in her mid-40s, with short gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. After introductions, she had me sit and walked through everything methodically. "Let's start with the basics," she said. You say the flower farm predates the HOA by 12 years. I bought the property in 2012. It had been a flower farm since the early 2000s. The HOA was formed in 2010, but my property wasn't included until 2011 when the developer expanded the neighborhood and my lot got incorporated into the association boundaries. You have documentation of the farm's existence prior to HOA inclusion? Yes. Property records, tax filings showing farm income going back to 2012, and photographs. I also have the original HOA documents that were sent when my property was included. I reviewed them thoroughly back then with a lawyer who confirmed my farm was grandfathered under Oregon property law. Rachel nodded, taking notes. Good, now the certified mail receipts. She showed you signatures? Yes, but I never signed for any such letters. I never received them. We can get handwriting analysis, but more importantly, certified mail creates a paper trail. We can subpoena the actual letters from the post office, compare signatures, and check delivery logs. If those receipts are fraudulent, that's mail fraud. That's what I thought. The destruction of your property is where this gets serious. Even if they believed they had authority, the scope of what they did could constitute criminal mischief or property destruction under Oregon law. The fact that it destroyed a business makes it worse. We're talking about potential felony territory depending on the damage amount. I estimate over $100,000. The plants alone were worth $40,000 at market value. The lost income for this season is another $50,000 at least. The irrigation system, soil preparation, greenhouse damage, and everything else pushes it over 6 figures easily. Rachel's eyebrows rose. That's definitely felony range. Over $1,000 is a misdemeanor property destruction, but over $10,000 can be a Class C felony in Oregon. Over $100,000. This is serious criminal exposure for everyone involved. So what do we do? Multiple tracks. First, civil litigation. We sue the HOA, Patricia Moreland personally, and any board members who authorize this. We seek damages, injunctive relief, and attorney's fees. Second, we push the criminal angle. I have contacts in the district attorney's office. With your video evidence and the damage amount, they might be interested. Third, if there's mail fraud, that's federal, we contact the postal inspectors. My head was spinning, but in a good way. How fast can we move? I'll file the civil suit by end of day tomorrow. I'll prepare a demand letter today that goes out immediately, putting them on notice and demanding they preserve all evidence. We'll also send a complaint to the state construction board since they did unpermitted demolition work. I'll reach out to the DA's office today or tomorrow. What's this going to cost me? My retainer is $5,000 for a case like this, and my hourly rate is $300. However, HOA cases in Oregon often allow for attorney's fee recovery if we win. Given your evidence, I'm confident enough that I'll agree to a modified arrangement. $3,000 retainer now, and if we recover damages, my fees come out of that. If we don't recover, we'll work out payments. I don't want costs to stop you from pursuing this. I shook her hand. Let's destroy them. Over the next week, things moved quickly. Rachel filed a comprehensive lawsuit against the Willow Creek Estates, HOA, Patricia Moreland, and the 3 other board members. The complaint was a thing of beauty, laying out the property destruction, the questionable authorization, the apparent mail fraud, and demanding both compensatory and punitive damages. The local newspaper, the Willow Creek Register, got wind of the story. A reporter named Kevin Shaw called me for an interview. I was hesitant at first, but Rachel thought publicity might help. HOA horror stories get attention, she said. Public pressure can be useful. The article ran on the front page of the local section. Local flower farmer alleges HOA destroyed business during hospital stay. Kevin had done his homework, including interviewing Jim, pulling photos from public records, and even getting a no comment from Patricia. The online version got hundreds of shares and comments from people sharing their own HOA nightmare stories. 2 days after the article, I got a call from a Detective Sarah Morrison with the Willow Creek Police Department. "Mr. Chen, I read the article about your situation. I'd like to come take a look at the property damage and get a formal statement if you have time." She arrived that afternoon, a woman in her 30s with a no-nonsense demeanor. She spent over an hour documenting everything with photographs and measurements. I showed her the security footage on my laptop, and I watched her expression darken as she viewed Patricia orchestrating the destruction. "This is extensive," Detective Morrison said. "I'm going to write a comprehensive report and forward it to the DA's office with a recommendation for criminal charges. The value of damages here puts it in felony range. The timing, with you in the hospital, and the questionable authorization, this isn't just an HOA dispute." "What charges are we talking about?" "Potentially criminal mischief in the first degree, which is a Class C felony for damage over $10,000. Possibly criminal trespass. If the mail fraud angle pans out, that's federal, outside my jurisdiction, but it adds weight to the overall pattern." "Will they actually prosecute?" "I can't promise anything, but I'm going to push for it. This is egregious." The next development came from an unexpected source. I started receiving emails and calls from other Willow Creek Estates residents. Some were supportive, sharing their own negative experiences with Patricia and the HOA board. But 3 residents had information that made me sit up and take notice. A man named Robert Vance called on a Wednesday evening. "Marcus, I don't know if this helps, but I used to be on the HOA board. I resigned 2 years ago because of Patricia's behavior. She runs that board like a dictatorship. Any board member who disagrees with her gets frozen out or harassed until they quit. I left because I couldn't deal with it anymore." "Did you ever see anything illegal?" "Not outright, but lots of questionable stuff. Contracts awarded to her friends without competitive bidding. Selective enforcement of rules depending on who she liked. She held a grudge against you specifically. I remember her ranting about your flower farm at meetings, calling it an eyesore that was bringing down property values. When I pointed out it was grandfathered, she said she'd find a way around it. Would you be willing to testify to that?" "Absolutely. I'll talk to your lawyer." Rachel was thrilled when I passed along Robert's information. She deposed him within days, and his testimony painted Patricia as vindictive and power-hungry, willing to bend or break rules to get her way. The second key contact was a woman named Ellen Cho who worked at the post office. "Mr. Chen," she said nervously when she called, "I shouldn't probably be telling you this, but I processed mail for Willow Creek Estates. Those certified letters the HOA claims they sent you, I don't remember them. I remember most certified mail going to your address because you get seed catalog orders sometimes. I would have remembered HOA letters. I'm not saying they didn't go out, but it's strange. Would there be records?" "Yes, the post office keeps tracking records. But someone official would have to request them." I passed this to Rachel, who immediately issued a subpoena for postal records related to the certified mail receipts Patricia had shown me. The third contact was perhaps the most damaging to Patricia's position. A contractor named Mike Sullivan reached out through Facebook. "I did work for the HOA," he wrote. "Patricia approached me last month about the gravel job on your property. I turned it down because something felt off. She wanted it done fast and cheap, and she specifically asked if I could do it on certain dates. When I asked if the homeowner had agreed to this, she got cagey and said it was authorized by the board. I declined the job. She ended up hiring some outfit from out of town, I think. Just thought you should know she was planning this well in advance." Rachel added Mike to the witness list. The evidence was piling up that this wasn't a spontaneous enforcement action, but a premeditated attack on my property. 3 weeks after the destruction, Rachel and I met with Assistant District Attorney James Park in his office at the county courthouse. Detective Morrison was there too, along with her report. "I've reviewed everything," Ada Park said, flipping through a file. "The security footage is damning. The damage amount is well documented. Detective Morrison's investigation is thorough. I'm prepared to move forward with criminal charges. Relief flooded through me. What charges? Criminal mischief in the first degree for Patricia Moreland and the board members. Possibly for the crew who did the work, though they might get immunity if they cooperate and testify about who hired them. We're also looking at potential fraud charges related to the authorization documents. I want to interview Mrs. Moreland under oath. If she lies, that's additional charges. What about the mail fraud? I've been in contact with the postal inspector's office. They're interested. The subpoena for postal records came back and it's problematic for Mrs. Moreland. Problematic how? Ada Park pulled out a document. The certified mail receipts she showed you. 2 of them don't match Postal Service records. The tracking numbers exist, but they were for certified letters sent to different addresses entirely. One was for a package sent to a business in Portland. The other was from a different time period altogether. Only one tracking number matches a letter sent to your address, and it was a notice about a neighborhood meeting, not a violation letter. So she forged them. That's what it looks like. We're pursuing mail fraud charges federally. That carries up to 5 years in federal prison per offense. The criminal case moved forward. Patricia and the 3 board members, Donald Eckert, Susan Hammond, and Richard Tully, were indicted by a grand jury on charges of criminal mischief in the first degree and fraud. Patricia faced additional federal charges for mail fraud. The arraignment was in early October, about 6 weeks after the destruction of my flower farm. I sat in the courtroom gallery, my incision finally healed enough that I could sit comfortably. Rachel sat beside me, though this was the criminal proceeding, separate from our civil case. Patricia arrived with a high-priced lawyer named Gerald Blackstone from a big Portland firm. She looked immaculate and confident, wearing a navy suit and pearls. The other board members looked significantly more worried, each with their own attorneys. The judge, a stern woman named Beatrice Torres, read the charges. Patricia pleaded not guilty to all counts. The other board members did the same, though Donald Eckert looked like he might throw up. Bail wasn't an issue for any of them. These were white-collar crimes, not violent offenses. But the judge set strict conditions that they were to have no contact with me and no involvement in HOA activities pending trial. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed Patricia. She put on a performance. "This is a witch hunt," she declared, looking directly at the cameras. Mr. Chen was in clear violation of neighborhood covenants. The HOA took appropriate action to remedy the situation. This prosecution is harassment, plain and simple. I will be vindicated. Rachel squeezed my arm. Let her talk. Everything she says can be used against her. The civil case was scheduled for trial in December, but Rachel was negotiating settlement discussions. The HOA's insurance carrier had gotten involved, and they were not happy with Patricia. Her actions had exposed them to massive liability. In early November, I received a settlement offer. $250,000 from the HOA's insurance, full payment of my attorney's fees, removal of Patricia from the board, and a written apology. "What do you think?" Rachel asked when we discussed it. "The money's good," I said. "But I want more than Patricia off the board. I want criminal convictions. I want everyone to know what she did." The criminal case proceeds regardless of civil settlement. This settlement doesn't affect that. Then let's counter. $300,000 attorney's fees, Patricia permanently removed and banned from HOA leadership, all fines and fees waived forever, and they pay to restore my property to its pre-destruction state. Rachel grinned. "I like the way you think." We countered at $350,000 to give negotiating room. The insurance company came back at $300,000, payment of all attorneys' fees and costs, Patricia's removal and permanent ban from HOA service, restoration of the property with certified horticulturist consultation to ensure proper remediation, and a written apology to be published in the Willow Creek Register. I accepted. It wouldn't bring back this year's lost season or the years of work building up the soil and plant stock, but it was substantial justice. The check cleared in late November, and Rachel took her fees from it. After everything, I netted about $260,000. The restoration work began immediately, with an HOA-hired crew removing all the gravel and bringing in fresh topsoil. A horticulturist they hired, a brilliant woman named Dr. Ellen Rodriguez, consulted with me on soil composition and helped plan the restoration. "This is actually an opportunity," Dr. Rodriguez said as we walked the property. "Starting fresh, we can optimize everything. Better drainage here, soil amendments there. You'll have a better farm than before." She was right. The restoration took 6 weeks, but by late December, the property was ready for spring planting. The greenhouse had been fully repaired and even upgraded. The irrigation system was new and more efficient. It was strange to see my land empty but prepared, like a blank canvas waiting for paint. The criminal trial began in February, almost 6 months after the destruction. I had been warned that trials take time, and the prosecution wanted to build an airtight case. The trial lasted 2 weeks. The prosecution called witness after witness. Jim testified about what he saw. Robert Vance testified about Patricia's vendetta against me. Mike Sullivan testified about Patricia's advance planning. Detective Morrison walked the jury through her investigation and the security footage, which was played on large monitors in the courtroom. The footage was devastating. The jury watched in silence as Patricia directed the destruction of my property. You could see her checking her phone, sipping coffee, smiling as the bobcat tore through flower beds. At one point, she was laughing with one of the workers. The prosecution played audio of her conversation with Jim, where her cold dismissal of his concerns echoed through the courtroom. The defense tried to argue that Patricia believed she had legitimate authority, that she was acting in good faith based on the HOA's covenants, and that any damage was unintentional. Gerald Blackstone was a skilled attorney, but he was working with terrible facts. The mail fraud evidence destroyed any good faith defense. The prosecution presented the postal inspector's analysis showing the certified mail receipts were falsified. Patricia had fabricated evidence of prior warnings to justify her actions. That showed premeditation and intent to deceive. The prosecution also called the crew members who had done the actual demolition. They had been granted immunity in exchange for testimony. The foreman, a weathered man named Carlos Diaz, testified that Patricia had hired them specifically because they were from out of town and wouldn't know the local situation. "She told us it was an authorized job," Carlos testified. "She said the homeowner had abandoned the property and the HOA was cleaning it up. She showed us papers, but I don't read legal documents well. She said just do the work, spread the gravel, and she'd pay us cash. We did the job. I feel terrible now knowing the truth." The defense tried to create doubt about the damage amount, arguing my valuation was inflated. The prosecution countered with Dr. Rodriguez as an expert witness. She walked the jury through the botanical value of the destroyed plants, the soil remediation work that had been ruined, the irrigation infrastructure, and the lost income. Her estimate actually exceeded mine by $20,000. The other 3 board members' attorneys tried to distance their clients from Patricia. They presented evidence that Patricia had told the board the violations and mailings were legitimate, that she had shown them the forged receipts, and that they had relied on her representations as board president. Donald Eckert broke down on the stand. "I trusted her," he said, tears streaming down his face. "She showed us the receipts, said everything was legal. I never would have voted to approve the work if I'd known it was all lies. I feel sick about what happened to Mr. Chen." The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the verdict was decisive. Patricia Moreland, guilty on all counts, criminal mischief in the first degree, fraud, and conspiracy. The other board members. Donald Eckert and Susan Hammond were found not guilty on most charges but guilty of a reduced charge of reckless endangerment of property for failing to properly investigate before authorizing such drastic action. Richard Tully was fully acquitted after evidence showed he had objected to the plan but been overruled. Patricia's face when the verdict was read was something I'll never forget. The confidence drained away, replaced by shock and then rage. She started to say something, but her attorney grabbed her arm. Sentencing came 6 weeks later. The federal mail fraud case had also concluded with a guilty verdict, so Judge Torres had the federal charges to consider as well. Mrs. Moreland, Judge Torres said, looking over her glasses at Patricia, you abused a position of trust in your community. You fabricated evidence, destroyed a man's livelihood, and showed no remorse. Your actions were calculated and cruel, timed specifically when Mr. Chen was hospitalized and vulnerable. This court takes such conduct seriously. Patricia was sentenced to 4 years in state prison for the state charges and 3 years for federal mail fraud to run concurrently. With good behavior, she'd serve about 3 years total. She was also ordered to pay restitution of $100,000 directly to me, on top of the civil settlement. Donald Eckert and Susan Hammond received suspended sentences, meaning no prison time if they stayed out of trouble, plus community service and probation. They also had to contribute to restitution, $20,000 each. Patricia was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, still maintaining she had done nothing wrong. "This is injustice," she shouted as the bailiffs guided her out. "I was protecting property values. He was in violation." The courtroom erupted and Judge Torres banged her gavel for order. Outside the courthouse, reporters crowded around me. Rachel had prepared me for this moment. "Justice was served today," I said simply. "No one should have to experience what I went through." HOAs serve important purposes, but they're not above the law. When leaders abuse their power, they must be held accountable. I'm grateful to the jury, the prosecutors, and everyone who helped bring the truth to light. Kevin Shaw from the Register had followed the story from the beginning. "What's next for your flower farm?" "I'm planting next week," I said, and I couldn't help but smile. "Spring is coming, and I've got dahlias and zinnias waiting to go in the ground. The farm will bloom again." That got printed as the headline. Flower farm to bloom again after HOA conviction. The Willow Creek Estates HOA underwent significant changes after the trial. The entire board was replaced in an emergency election. The new board, led by a retired schoolteacher named Margaret Finley, reached out to me with a genuine apology and a request to start fresh. "We're implementing new policies," Margaret told me over coffee in my restored greenhouse. "Checks and balances so no one person has the kind of power Patricia wielded, transparency requirements, and honestly, most neighbors love your flower farm. We'd like to feature it in the next neighborhood newsletter if you're comfortable with that." "I'd be okay with that," I said. "I never wanted to be at war with the HOA, I just wanted to grow flowers and live my life." By March, I was back in full operation, the soil doctor. Rodriguez and I had prepared was perfect. I planted heritage dahlia varieties, rows of zinnias in every color imaginable, sunflowers that would tower over everything by July, and a new section of peonies that would take a few years to fully establish, but would be spectacular. Jim helped me plant, as did several other neighbors who volunteered. The destruction and trial had actually brought out a community spirit that hadn't existed before. People were paying attention to their HOA now, asking questions, demanding accountability. My customers, the florists and farmers market regulars, welcomed me back enthusiastically. I had lost a season, but the settlement money had kept me financially stable, and the insurance payout for lost income helped. More importantly, I hadn't lost my spirit or my love for the work. One warm afternoon in April, I was staking tomato plants in the greenhouse when a car pulled up. I tensed for a moment, but it was just a young couple I didn't recognize. They got out and approached hesitantly. "Mr. Chen," the woman said, "I'm sorry to bother you." We read about what happened to you in the paper. We're looking at a house in Willow Creek Estates, but after reading about the HOA situation, we're nervous. Is it actually okay now? I wiped my hands on my jeans and smiled. It's better than okay. What happened to me led to real change. The new board is transparent and reasonable. They're good people trying to do right. Don't let one bad actor scare you away from a good neighborhood. Thank you, the man said. That means a lot, hearing it from you especially, and your farm is beautiful. We'd love to be your neighbors. They bought the house 2 streets over, and they became regular customers for bouquets and vegetables from my expanded garden. In May, the Willow Creek Register did a follow-up feature. Kevin Shaw came out to photograph the farm in full bloom. The images were stunning, rows of color stretching across the property, the greenhouse full of seedlings, the whole operation humming with life. This is a story of resilience, Kevin wrote in the article. Marcus Chen's flower farm nearly died under tons of gravel, but it bloomed again, more beautiful than before. It's a reminder that even in the darkest moments, with enough determination and justice on your side, growth is possible. The article won some kind of regional journalism award. Kevin sent me the plaque as a thank you for sharing my story. I hung it in the greenhouse. Patricia served her time at Coffee Creek Correctional Facility, Oregon's women's prison. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she blamed me for everything, that she maintained she'd been right and the world was wrong. Some people never learn. The restitution payments came in monthly installments, garnished from her pension. I put that money into a fund for future farm improvements and equipment. It felt like justice being transformed into growth. By summer, the farm was in full glory. The dahlias were winning awards at the county fair. My sunflowers attracted photographers from all over the region. The farmers' market customers told me they'd missed my flowers, that nothing else compared. I stood in my fields on a July evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors that rivaled my flowers. The stalks rustled in the breeze. Bees hummed in the blooms. Everything was alive and thriving. 8 years earlier, I'd started this farm as a way to cope with losing my wife. It had saved me then, giving me purpose when I had none. When Patricia tried to destroy it, she tried to destroy that part of my healing. But she failed. The farm survived, and so did I. I thought about calling my lawyer, Rachel, to thank her again, but I'd already thanked her a dozen times. Instead, I cut a bouquet of my best dahlias and drove to her office. Her receptionist smiled when I walked in. "He's here with flowers again," she called back. Rachel emerged from her office, laughing. "Marcus, you've got to stop. My house looks like a florist shop. One last time, I promise, to say thank you for everything." She took the bouquet and her eyes softened. "You did the hard work. You stood up for yourself. You didn't let them get away with it. I just helped with the legal framework. You did more than that. You believed me from the start. It was easy to believe you. The evidence was overwhelming and your case was righteous." She gestured to her office. "Come on back for a minute." In her office, she pulled out a file. "I wanted to show you something. Remember I said this case would get attention? I've gotten 14 new clients from HOA disputes since your case went public. People who were being bullied or facing questionable enforcement actions. Your case gave them courage to fight back. You started something bigger than just your own justice. That hit me harder than I expected. Really. Change happens when someone is brave enough to stand up first. You were that person for a lot of people." I left her office feeling lighter than I had in months. The case was over. The farm was thriving. Justice had been served. But more than that, maybe something good had come from something terrible. The neighborhood dynamics had shifted too. Patricia's closest allies, the ones who had supported her reign of petty tyranny, found themselves sidelined. The new board was elected by homeowners who wanted cooperation, not confrontation. Monthly HOA meetings, which used to be sparsely attended rubber stamp affairs, now regularly drew 30 or 40 residents who actually participated in decisions. Margaret, the new board president, told me that they'd revised the covenants to include protections against exactly what happened to me. Any major enforcement action now required notification to the homeowner with photo evidence, a formal hearing where the homeowner could present their case, a vote by the full board with at least 3 members supporting it, and oversight by an independent attorney to ensure legality. "It should have always been this way," Margaret said. "Rules without fairness are just tyranny." By August, I was invited to speak at a state HOA conference about my experience. I was nervous about public speaking, but Rachel encouraged me to do it. "Tell your story," she said. "Help other people avoid what you went through." The conference was in Salem, at a hotel conference center. I stood at a podium in front of about 200 HOA board members from across Oregon. I told them everything: the farm's history, Patricia's vendetta, the destruction, the legal battle, and the resolution. "The lesson isn't that HOAs are bad," I concluded. "It's that power without accountability corrupts. Your HOA covenants give you authority, but not unlimited authority. You serve your community. You're not rulers. When you forget that, when you start believing the rules matter more than the people they're meant to serve, you become the villain in someone else's story. Don't be Patricia Moreland. Be the board member who asks questions, who insists on fairness, who remembers that behind every property is a human being whose life you're affecting." The applause was loud and sustained. Afterward, dozens of board members came up to thank me and ask questions. Several admitted they'd seen similar power dynamics in their own HOAs and were going to push for reform. One older gentleman shook my hand firmly. "I've been on my HOA board for 12 years. I've seen the Patricia Morelands of the world. They're everywhere. Thank you for holding yours accountable. It gives the rest of us hope that the system can work." That fall, as the growing season wound down and I harvested the last of the sunflowers and late-season dahlias, I reflected on the entire ordeal. 15 months from that terrible night when appendicitis struck to now, so much had happened. My property was more beautiful than ever. The civil settlement had given me financial security. The criminal convictions had delivered justice. The HOA was fixed. My business was thriving. I'd even started dating someone, a woman named Lisa who owned a bakery downtown and loved getting fresh flowers weekly, but the real victory was more personal. Patricia had tried to break me at my most vulnerable, and she failed. She'd tried to erase years of work, and instead she'd only made me stronger and more determined. The security cameras were still rolling 24/7. I'd learned that lesson well. But now they mostly captured the boring daily reality of a flower farm, me working in the beds, customers stopping by, the occasional deer nibbling on things they shouldn't. In November, I received a letter from Coffee Creek Correctional Facility. My first instinct was to throw it away, but curiosity won. I opened it carefully. The letter was from Patricia. The handwriting was tight and controlled, just like her personality. "Mr. Chen," it read. "My attorney advises me that a letter of apology might favorably influence my parole hearing. So here it is. I apologize for what happened to your property. My actions were inappropriate. I hope you can move forward with your life. Patricia Moreland." I read it twice. It was the most insincere apology I'd ever seen, grudging and motivated entirely by self-interest. But it was something. I filed it away with all the other case documents. When Patricia's parole hearing came around a year and a half later, the parole board contacted me for a victim impact statement. I submitted one in writing. "Patricia Moreland destroyed my livelihood and showed no remorse throughout the trial," I wrote. "However, I believe in rehabilitation and second chances. If she has genuinely reflected on her actions and accepted responsibility, parole might be appropriate. But if this is merely an attempt to get out early without real change, she should serve her full sentence. The parole board's judgment should rest on whether they believe she understands the harm she caused and has changed." Patricia was denied parole. According to the report I received, she had been involved in multiple disciplinary incidents in prison, including trying to organize other inmates to pressure staff about minor grievances. She hadn't changed at all. She'd serve her full sentence. Meanwhile, my life moved forward. Lisa and I got serious, and she moved into the farmhouse in the spring of my 3rd year post-destruction. She loved the property and started talking about expanding the operation to include flowers for weddings. "You could do wedding packages," she said enthusiastically. Couples could come choose their flowers from the field, personal, local, sustainable. People love that. It was a good idea. We launched the wedding flower service the following year, and it was an instant hit. Having nearly lost everything made me appreciate success even more. Jim remained a close friend. He'd stuck by me through everything, and I didn't forget it. When he had a health scare of his own, I was there every day, bringing food and helping with his yard work. That's what good neighbors do. The new HOA board continued to be reasonable and fair. They actually helped me when I wanted to add a small farm stand near the road. The old Patricia board would have fought it tooth and nail. Margaret's board helped me navigate the permitting process and even included the farm stand in a neighborhood map for visitors. 5 years after the destruction, the Willow Creek Register did an anniversary feature. Kevin Shaw came back out, now with a full beard and a senior editor title. "5 years ago, your farm was buried under gravel," he said, camera clicking as he photographed the blooming fields. "Now look at it." "How does it feel?" "Surreal sometimes," I admitted. "I still have moments where I remember seeing those trucks in the security footage and I feel that same rage. But mostly I feel grateful. Grateful for justice. Grateful for second chances. Grateful for community." What Patricia meant for destruction became an opportunity for growth. Not just for my farm, but for how our whole neighborhood thinks about governance and community. Any advice for others facing similar situations with HOAs or any authority that oversteps? Document everything. Stand up for yourself. Find good allies both in your community and in professional help like lawyers. Don't let bullies win, and remember that justice might take time, but it's worth pursuing. The article included then and now photos. The then was that gray wasteland of gravel from the security footage. The now was an explosion of color, rows of flowers stretching toward the horizon, the greenhouse full of activity, customers browsing the farm stand. Patricia was released from prison around that time after serving her full sentence. I heard she moved to California to live with a sister. She never contacted me again, and I was fine with that. Some people are chapters in your life that you're happy to close. The restitution payments had all been made. The civil settlement was long since paid. The farm was profitable beyond my initial projections. I'd published a book about sustainable flower farming that included my story, and it had become something of a bestseller in agricultural circles. Lisa and I got married in the flower fields 6 years after the destruction. It was a small ceremony, just close friends and family, but it was perfect. Jim was my best man. Rachel came with her husband. Even Margaret and several other neighbors attended. We stood under an arch of dahlias and sunflowers, surrounded by the blooms that had started as a way to cope with loss and became a symbol of resilience. During our vows, I looked out at the fields and thought about everything that had led to this moment. The grief that started the farm. The passion that grew it. The destruction that nearly ended it. The fight that saved it. The growth that followed. "These flowers represent more than beauty," I said, improvising beyond the vows we'd written. "They represent survival, hope, and the refusal to let darkness win. Every seed planted is an act of faith that tomorrow will come and bring growth. That's what this farm is, and that's what we're building together." There wasn't a dry eye in the attendants, including mine. The years continued to pass. The farm expanded to 3 acres when I purchased an adjoining lot. The wedding flower business boomed. We hired employees. The farm stand became a destination. Everything Patricia tried to destroy not only survived but flourished beyond anything I'd imagined. On the 10th anniversary of the destruction, I stood in the fields alone early in the morning before the farm opened. The dawn light caught the dew on thousands of petals. The air smelled like earth and flowers and growing things. Bees were already working the early blooms. I thought about Patricia sometimes, wondered if she ever reflected on her actions with genuine understanding. Probably not. Some people are so invested in being right that they never learn to be good, but her failure to destroy me had taught me something valuable. Strength isn't about never falling down, it's about getting back up, seeking justice, and rebuilding even better than before. It's about turning pain into purpose and destruction into determination. My phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. Morning, love. Come back for breakfast when you're done communing with the flowers. I smiled and headed back to the farmhouse, the same house I'd owned for years, the same property that had weathered so much. Behind me, the fields stretched out in the rising sun, a testament to survival and the simple truth that when you plant good things with patient care, beauty will grow. The HOA debacle was a scar now, healed but not forgotten. It had changed me, changed the neighborhood, and changed how I saw the world. Authority without compassion is tyranny. Rules without humanity are oppression. But justice, when pursued with determination and truth, can prevail. My flower farm bloomed on, year after year, a living reminder that even when someone tries to bury your dreams under tons of gravel, if you fight back and refuse to surrender, those dreams can bloom again more beautiful than ever before. Patricia Moreland had tried to write the ending to my story. Instead, she'd only written one chapter in a much longer book, and the chapters that followed were mine to write, filled with flowers, justice, love, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that I'd stood up for myself and won. The farm stand opened at 9. Customers would come for bouquets, for vegetables, for the experience of walking through blooming fields. Some would be new visitors, attracted by our social media posts or word of mouth. Others would be regulars who'd been coming for years. All of them would enjoy the fruits of resilience, though most would never know the full story of what these fields had survived. That was okay. The flowers didn't need people to know their history to share their beauty. They just bloomed season after season, doing what flowers do best, bringing color and life to the world, regardless of what had tried to stop them. And I'd be there, tending them, grateful for every single blossom. Word count, 12,000 words.